One of the best ways to improve your habitat and get deer to go where you want them to is to use proper hinge cuts. They can be used to guide deer in front of your stand for the shot or to prevent them from getting downwind of your favorite stand. Hinge cuts seem like the perfect, well-rounded technique because they check all the boxes. They can provide some high-quality, year-round forage down at a deer's level, and they can provide some great cover that lasts for a good while. But if you use hinge cuts wrong or you have no idea what you're really doing, you can have a drastic effect on your hunting and not in a good way. So in this video, we're going to go over 3 reasons why your hinge cuts suck and how you can fix them. But before we go over your terrible hinge cuts and how to fix them, I'd like to thank this week's sponsor, me. That wasn't as dumb in my head. Do me a favor, go to informedoutdoors.com, get yourself some merch, or just check it out. Let me know what you think of the designs. I'm going to add some hats here pretty soon. They might be up by the time this video uploads, but just let me know what you think. Also, if this is your first time on my channel, hit that subscribe button and make sure you click that bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload a video. And so the first reason why your hinge cuts suck is because you are making those cuts at the wrong height. The whole point of a hinge cut is to bring that canopy down into a more usable form, but also keep the tree alive. At the proper height, you can create a sort of living fence that not only blocks movement a certain direction, but will also throw out shoots and new growth for deer to eat. And if you watched last week's video, you know how important woody browse is for deer. And if you haven't seen this video, you need to go back and watch it, or watch somebody else's video about woody browse, because I will die on this hill, woody browse is the single most important food source for deer. Cut at the wrong height though, and you drastically decrease its benefit. If you make that cut too high, that browse is going to be out of a deer's reach in about a year or two, and they could probably just walk right underneath it. Make that cut too low, and deer will probably just step right over it. And I found that it's more likely that that tree just kind of pops off that hinge if it's really low. Also, if you're using prescribed fire, which you absolutely should, it's more likely that that tree will be killed and then you lose that browse, which it's not necessarily a bad thing if you kill that hinge cut you made. You just lose that cover and that barrier to movement. For most of us, the right height for your hinge cut is between your knee and your hip. This puts it at the right height so that forage stays in a more usable height for far longer, and it's more likely that deer aren't just going to go under or over that hinge. I say that height works for most of us because in some areas where you would get a lot of snow, those areas way up north where you got to deal with that height, making that cut between hip and shoulder height makes more sense, so that brow stays above that snow line. Now I would keep it closer to my hip, but you can get up to shoulder height without it being too dangerous. There is absolutely no purpose, no reason that your hinge should be above your head. That, like I said, that serves no purpose, and it can be a lot more dangerous. So the second reason why your hinge cuts suck is because you're trying to hinge cut the wrong tree species. Certain tree species just lend themselves better to hinge cutting than others. Some of them are just too hard and brittle, and they'll either just snap off that hinge, they'll barber chair in a dangerous way, or they'll just die. The hinge cut requires a certain amount of flexibility on that hinge to keep that cadmium layer intact to keep it alive. Hackberries, maples, dogwoods, hickories, and elms are all great candidates for hinge cutting. Not only do they sprout very quickly, but most of them are actually pretty preferred deer browse. I look for trees that are not only suited for hinge cutting, but are also highly preferred deer browse. If it meets those 2 criteria, then I will most likely hinge cut them. I do include hickories on this list, even though they're not highly preferred deer browse, because there's just so many of them in my woods that in most places I will stump treat them, but depending on where they are, I will hinge cut them, and we'll get into some of those scenarios in the next tip. Species that do not make good hinge cut candidates are walnuts, and some people would be very mad if you got anywhere near a walnut with a chainsaw, but also poplars, sassafras, redbuds, and ash. None of those make good hinge cut candidates. And this is just another reason why learning your tree species, or just plant ID in general, will set your property above the rest. Plant ID is not just for nerds, it's for great outdoorsmen. And the third reason why your hinge cuts are absolutely garbage is because you're using them in the wrong place and or application. A lot of thought needs to go into how, where, and what you are hinge cutting. And us hunters and land managers kind of tend to fall into 2 camps. You either absolutely love hinge cuts or you despise them. We need to move away from these 2 polar opposites, get out of these fringes and more into the middle. I think the reason why most of the people who hate hinge cuts do so because they tend to be very overused and they can make a property look like a just tangled, jumbled mess. And I think those that are absolutely in love with hinge cuts love them because not only do they have great benefits, but they tend to be overrepresented in hunting media, if that makes sense. We should all be utilizing hinge cuts to some degree in our property management plans, but they need to be used in conjunction with all the other habitat management techniques. You shouldn't be using all hinge cuts, and you shouldn't be using no hinge cuts. For me, the best application for hinge cuts is to either block eyesight, whether you're blocking a deer's sight or a other hunter's sight, or you're using them to either guide deer movement to or away from something. So use hinge cuts to guide deer in front of your tree stands and prevent them from getting downwind of you. You can see in this video that this buck was feeding along this indistinguishable bench, went downwind of me. Now luckily he was young and wasn't really paying attention and didn't catch my scent. But if I had done some preparation, I could have guided him up in front of me, so then he could have gone on his way, giving me a shot opportunity, although I wasn't going to shoot this particular buck, but at least it would prevent a more wary deer from catching my scent. You can also use hinge cuts dotted throughout your bedding cuts, your bedding thickets, whatever you want to call them, to create a little more structure. You get a little more immediate cover than having to wait a couple years for that regrowth to really happen. What you want to avoid if you are going to use hinge cuts is you want to avoid giant patches of hinge cuts. They shouldn't dominate your habitat. They should just be used to complement your other techniques and kind of bring everything together. So that was 3 reasons why your hinge cuts suck and how to fix them. Let us know down in the comments below how you're using hinge cuts, or if you've had to go back and fix your hinge cutting mistakes. So if you like this video, chances are you're going to like one of these videos over here, so give them a watch. Hit that like button if you like this video, share it if you found it helpful, and make sure that you are subscribed so you can stay informed.